The 9,457th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is threats to international peace and security. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Ukraine to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the following briefers to participate in this meeting. Mr. Avdivka, Deputy to the High Representative of the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, and Mr. Randy Kredico. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Avdivka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am providing this briefing on behalf of the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu. Since the last briefing to the Security Council on this topic only 2 weeks ago, the provision of military assistance to the armed forces of Ukraine has continued in the context of the full-scale invasion of that country launched by the Russian Federation on 24 February 2022 in violation of the UN Charter and international law. Over the last months, reported transfers of arms and ammunition to the Ukrainian forces have expanded. Much of the information on transfers of weapons systems and ammunition from governments is available through open sources. These transfers have reportedly included heavy conventional weapons such as battle tanks, armored combat vehicles, combat aircraft, helicopters, large caliber artillery systems, missile systems, and uncrewed combat aerial vehicles, as well as remotely operated munitions, small arms, and light weapons and their ammunition. We also take note of reports related to the transfer of depleted uranium tank ammunition to the Ukrainian forces. In addition, we are aware of reports of states transferring or planning to transfer weapons such as uncrewed aerial vehicles and ammunition to the Russian armed forces, including for possible use in Ukraine. In this context, I would like to strongly reiterate that any transfer of weapons must take place within the applicable international legal framework, including relevant Security Council resolutions. Reports related to the use of anti-personnel landmines and the use and transfer of cluster munitions in Ukraine are disturbing. Reports already indicate significant land contaminated with explosive remnants of war of different types. The process to map this contamination and clear the land safely will be long and require resources and the support of the international community. I call for an immediate end to the use of these indiscriminate and horrendous weapons, which have lasting and devastating impact on innocent civilians long after conflicts have ended. I call upon all states that have not yet done so to urgently consider acceding to the Convention on the Prohibition of the Use, Stockpiling, Production, and Transfer of Anti-Personnel Mines, and on their destruction, and to the Convention on Cluster Munitions. I also reiterate my call to all relevant parties to abide by their obligations under the Convention on prohibitions or restrictions on the use of certain conventional weapons which may be deemed to be excessively injurious or to have indiscriminate effects, and not to transfer or use any mines prohibited by its amended Protocol 2. The supply of weapons and ammunition into any armed conflict situation raises significant concerns about the potential escalation of violence and the risks of diversion. Measures to counter the potential diversion of weapons and ammunition will be key to post-conflict recovery and regional security and stability, as well as to conflict prevention in other regions. In the new Agenda for Peace, the Secretary General once again called on member states to take concrete measures to address challenges related to diversion at the regional, sub-regional, and national levels. The prevention of illicit flow of arms and diversion, as stipulated by Target 16.4 of the Sustainable Development Goals, can only be effectively achieved through strong cooperation and coordination by the international community. As I mentioned many times before, transparency in armaments is a crucial confidence-building measure which can serve to reduce tensions and ambiguities between member states. I urge member states to utilize various UN instruments to increase transparency, such as the UN Register of Conventional Arms, and to prevent diversion through instruments such as the Arms Trade Treaty, the Firearms Protocol, the Program of Action on Small Arms and Light Weapons, and its International Tracing Instrument. In addition, I look forward to the General Assembly's endorsement of the Global Framework for Through-Life Conventional Ammunition Management and to its operationalization to counter the diversion of conventional ammunition of all types from small caliber to the largest calibers. Mr. President, all parties to any armed conflict have a duty to protect civilians in armed conflict and to ensure compliance with applicable international law, including international humanitarian law. From 24 February 2022 to October 8, 2023, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has recorded 27,768 civilian casualties in Ukraine, with 9,806 killed and 17,962 injured. The actual figures are likely to be considerably higher. The vast majority of civilian casualties are a result of the use of explosive weapons with wide area effects, including by shelling from artillery, tanks, and multiple launch rocket systems, cruise and ballistic missiles, and by airstrikes. Regrettably, the use of armed, uncrewed aerial vehicles against civilians and civilian infrastructure has not ceased. Just like any other weapons or weapon systems, armed, uncrewed aerial vehicles must not be used in a manner inconsistent with international humanitarian law. The Secretary General has unequivocally urged all states to avoid the use of explosive weapons in populated areas, as such use is highly likely to result in indiscriminate harm to civilians, including in Ukraine. Civilians and civilian infrastructure across Ukraine continue to face unrelenting and indiscriminate attacks. Let me say it again. Attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure are prohibited under international law in Ukraine and in any other conflict setting. All such attacks must stop immediately. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, before closing, I wish to reiterate that the United Nations is committed to support all meaningful efforts to bring a just and sustainable peace to Ukraine, guided by the UN Charter, international law, and relevant General Assembly resolutions. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank Mr. Ebo for his briefing. I now give the floor to Mr. Randy Kredico.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a speech that I wrote here, but I have some eye issues with stigmas in spots, so I'm going to have to do what I've done for 50 years as a public speaker, and that is kind of extemporize and make it shorter, and I can speak from the heart. And thank everybody on this distinguished council for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and my experience as it relates to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the escalation and the potential of more arms going into Ukraine from the U.S. government, which I strongly oppose. This morning I saw a lot of women in Kiev, mothers of conscripted Ukrainians on the street. I haven't seen this before, asking for demobilization. So that is picking up in Ukraine, and I think it's going to continue. So I do want to say that, first of all, before I introduce myself, that I feel very safe and secure in this body, inside this building. But once I've left this building, I will not feel so safe and secure. I will be in a state of panic, as I have been for 5 months, ever since my name was placed on this, the Ukrainian assassination list. There it is, Myrat Vorit's assassination list, which was added back in April after I returned to a trip to Donbass and to Moscow. I'm not the only person. I take it, by the way, I take it very seriously, this list. If you read the Washington Post this week, there's a story that documents 22 people on this list who have, as the list server says, been liquidated. There are a lot of people on this list: Ray McGovern, who spoke here, Roger Waters, who spoke here, and Faina Sarankova, who you may have seen a couple of weeks ago with a video. She's a 14-year-old that lives in Ludansk. And that poor woman came here and she spoke against the escalation because some of her friends had been killed and disappeared where she lives. And she writes fairy tales, and she's 14 years old. And it's not just her. There are hundreds of individuals of her age or younger that are on this list. I mean, how low can you sink? I hope somebody is listening in Washington. You have the clout to put an end to this list. Okay, my name is Randy Kredico, and people are probably wondering what gives him the right to be here. What kind of credentials does Randy Kredico have? Well, I'll tell you who I am. I'm Randy Kredico. I am, for many years, since I was 19, which is 50 years ago, a political satirist, voice impressionist, a comedian. I did that. I appeared on a lot of television shows. I even appeared at the Smithsonian, a lot of nightclubs in Las Vegas and everywhere. I'm also a civil rights activist. For 15 years, I was the director of the prestigious William Moses Kunstler Fund for Racial Justice, where I received 2 awards, including actually 4 awards, 2 awards that I received from the heroic, saintly Madres de Plaza de Mayo de Argentina, Linea Fundadora. I am also the host of Live on the Fly on WBAI Radio and Progressive Radio Network. WBAI is part of the Pacific Network, and it reaches the entire tri-state community and area and all the way up to Kingston, New York. It's a unique station, WBAI. WBAI is a free speech radio station, been around for 60 years. It takes no money. Absolutely no money from hedge funds, no money from corporations, and no money from the government. It's completely listener supported, which makes it unique. It gives us a lot of freedom at that station, a lot of latitude to speak the truth. Now, right now, I have a show that started at 3 at WBAI to 5, but I'm not there, I'm here. However, they are broadcasting the show right now, simulcasting, not the show, but this proceeding all the way through. All the way through. They're going to run it for the next hour and a half, no matter how long it lasts, and you're going to hear not just me, but you're going to hear from the Ukrainian ambassador, you're going to hear from everybody here will be heard because we do not engage in censorship at WBAI, which is a stark contrast to what you hear in the mainstream or see in the mainstream media. You see since February 24, 2022, you've seen nothing but anti-Russian disinformation, anti-Russian distortions, Russophobia, and anti-Russian mass hatred through the lens of these corporate media outlets. And it's gotten so bad, this is how bad that it has gotten, the hysteria, is that recently a presentation of Shostakovich's Seventh Symphony, the Leningrad Symphony, was canceled at Lincoln Center. Can you imagine that? In New York City, they canceled it. Lincoln Center. Well, for the last year and a half, from February 24th, I decided this year, after a year of seeing the same stuff, the same Russophobia on television, and their slanted view. It was almost like they were echo chamber, the mainstream media, of the narrative being pumped out of Washington from the Pentagon and from the CIA and from the White House and State Department. So I decided that I was going to go and find out for myself what was going on. I went to the station manager and the program director, Linda, and said, can I go over there and report for WBAI and get my own view? Because there were no Western reporters in Donbass. I wanted to go to Donbass and find out what was going on. Nobody was there. They were all in Kiev. And she said, yeah, here you go. So I went. After 2 days, I'm not reading this. After 2 days, on my way to Russia, I spent 2 days in Dubai, at the UAE capital. It was a lovely experience there. Wonderful people and a beautiful city and very hospitable, and great food at a place called Gal, where I ate. A place called Gal, because I thought it was going to be my last meal. I really did. I said, it's going to be my last meal. I really thought I was going to die when I was over there, and I thought it was going to be my last good meal, because once in Russia, from all that I've heard in the mainstream media was gloom and doom, that the Russian economy was dead, there was going to be long bread lines, and there was going to be soup kitchens and all of that because of the economic sanctions imposed on them by the EU, the UK, and US. So I got there on April 2nd, and I stayed 5 days in Moscow. And while I was in Moscow, I did not see any signs whatsoever of economic decay. It was just the opposite. The stores, shelves were full. The streets, the cars, there were so many cars, so much traffic. It looked like the Long Island Expressway during rush hour. That's how crowded it was. The malls were full, the restaurants were full, the bars were 3 deep. So I said, all right, I don't see anything here. And so now I'm going to go to Donbass. So I hooked up with a couple of journalists, French journalists, and a Russian half journalist and translator, and we went on to Donbass. But before we went, I had to take a day of a crash course in first aid, and which was very scary because the first thing they teach you is be careful when you get to Donbass. Be careful in Mariupol and in Donetsk. Be careful. Do not walk on the grass. Do not walk on the grass because the grass was inundated with what are called petal mines and butterfly mines which are totally banned. And a lot of people, I had read about it prior to my visit, had been maimed. Children had been maimed. The 15-year-old kid had been killed. And so that was the first thing, the petal mines. And so that got into my head. Do not walk in the grass. Of course, I did walk into the grass when I got over there because I'm so absent-minded. They also taught us how to put a tourniquet on if somebody lost a leg, and where to put the elbow and where to put the knee and not cut off the circulation. So this was a lot to absorb for me, an awful lot to absorb for me. And then they started talking about red zones and green zones and yellow zones and the difference and all of that. And I got to tell you something. I said, I'm not going. This is too much for me. I'm not going to go. But I told the guys, I'm going. Goodbye, guys. Let's say goodbye.
Excuse me, just
Yes.
a moment, if you may allow me to interrupt you. Council member has raised a point of order.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I believe we were asked to this meeting to talk about the inflow of Western weapons to Ukraine. I wonder if we could maybe focus on that rather than this anecdotal stuff. We appreciate the briefing. We're a bit limited for time. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom. So if you could please, sir,
Okay.
continue and
All right,
move to your
so,
conclusions. Thank you.
All right, I will say that I went down to Donbass. I went a train to Rostov and then an armored vehicle to Donetsk and Mariupol. And when I arrived, and this is a point about the point of order here, the point about what I saw when I was down there. First day I was down there in Donetsk, the very first day, what did I see? A university that was shelled with a U.S. Lockheed Martin HIMARS missile. First day I was there, all right? And this happened all week. They hit it. This is their MO. They hit the university, and then EMS personnel show up to attend to the wounded and carry out the dead. And then 20 minutes later, the same place is shelled again to give it maximum damage to the people that were there helping. Now, that was the very first day. The second day I was there was a open air market, similar to what we have, same HIMARS missiles hit an open air market, just like the one at Union Square down the street over here. That kind of market where women were putting out flowers for the upcoming Easter Sunday in the Russian Orthodox Church. They hit that, and then 20 minutes I was there, I reported on it. I saw the HIMARS missile slam there and slam in the back. I got there a couple hours later, but it was a civilian target that they hit with U.S. missiles, with HIMARS missiles. They did that, and I spoke to the women up front with their flowers, elderly women. A lot of people were killed, and I said, how do you do this? They were putting the flowers back together again. How on earth are you able to do this? And they said, this is our land. I am staying here. You can kill me. And everybody said the same thing. They don't care for us. They're hitting civilian targets to terrorize us and get us out of here, to take our land and take our resources. They don't care about us at all. And this happened the whole time I was there, including my way back to New York City on Easter Sunday. This happened on Easter Sunday, 5:30 in the morning. They did the same thing. Ukrainian forces, 8-9 kilometers away, they shelled a Russian Orthodox church, the biggest one there, at 5:30 in the morning, killing some early worshipers, and then later they did it again 30 minutes, 40 minutes later, and they killed more people. All right, so that's what we are doing with those HIMARS missiles. All right, that's one of the reasons why I stand up against it. against the acceleration, adding, what do you want, ATACMs to hit these areas? It's bad enough with these HIMARS missiles. They were targeting civilians, and that was it. And I was scared, and they stayed, and then I went to Mariupol. And down there, I saw all the damage done. It looked like Dresden, and I walked down Nicholas Street there, which was totally leveled, including a building that had been bombed by Azov fanatics or Azov militants. They bombed a 200-unit apartment building, and from there I walked through the rubble, and I found this little spot there, this little oasis, this makeshift little cafe run by two teenage women there, one who I got to know by the name of Valerie. And Valerie had relatives that were killed and had friends that were killed during the liberation of Mariupol and prior by the Azov forces that were very brutal throughout that period of time. But they were staying, they are rebuilding, they're not going anywhere. They are not going anywhere. They ended up being at the Azov stall there at the very end, these Azov battalion troops firing missiles willy-nilly into civilian populated areas. So, got me going here. Driving there, by the way, I must tell you, driving to Mariupol on both sides, driving 90 miles an hour with this Russian driver in this armored vehicle. It was an armored vehicle. And on both sides, there were these pedal mines. On both sides, they hadn't been defused yet, but they were all over the place. They are definitely targeting civilians in Donbass, and that's what I saw. I saw a lot more while I was there. And then I saw the other day I'm watching President Biden on television, ostensibly there to talk about the attacks in Israel and the genocide that followed, that's taken place in Gaza. That's why he supposedly was there. But he only spent about 30 seconds talking about that and used it as a vehicle to talk about hustling the American people into shelling out more money to send more weapons to Ukraine so they can kill more civilians like what they have done in Donetsk and Mariupol. Use that. He used that, and it was going to create jobs. Well, what kind of jobs, Mr. President, are we creating here with the money you're asking us to give to you? What kind of jobs are they? We're going to create a lot of jobs there. Well, what kind of jobs? What kind of products are they? Oh, yeah, the toasters? How does it benefit us? Do we have incubators? Do we have sneakers? Do we have Coleman stoves? Carrier air conditioners? Television sets? There's no product that benefits the American people there, Mr. President. And I said, how could he use this? Exploit the tragedy in Gaza to hustle for more weapons for Ukraine.
Mr. Kratico, sorry to interrupt you. According to my watch, you've been speaking for about 17 minutes.
Oh, I should be. Why? I'm sorry.
So I would kindly ask you to conclude your intervention in 1 minute, please.
Okay, I will.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, at any rate, I strongly urge that this come to an end. Stop the March of Folly before the March of Folly ends us. And let me just close with the words by the president of Brazil, President Lula, who said just the other day at the Belt and Road Initiative, he said, look, the U.S. has got to stop promoting war and start talking peace. And he's right, and most of the world agrees with that. And the only way to do that is to end arms shipments to Ukraine.
Thank you very much for your briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Спасибо, господин председатель. Thank you,
Благодарим
Mr. President.
заместителя
We're
высокого
grateful
представителя по
to
вопросам
Undersecretary
разоружения
General
Адеджи Эба за его доклад.
for disarmament,
Отдельное
Adedje Eba, for
спасибо
his report.
представителю
In
американского
particular, I'd like to
гражданского
thank
общества Рэнди
the
Кредика,
representative of
поделившемуся
American
не
civil
только
society, Randy
вопросами многих
Kredico,
американцев к своему руководству
who shared not only
в
the questions
контексте
that many
украинского кризиса, но и
Americans
своими
ask of their
впечатлениями от поездки в
leadership in the
Донбасс
context of the Ukraine
и от
crisis,
общения
but
с его
his
жителями.
impressions
Я хотел бы
from his
извиниться
trip
перед
to
вами за
Donbass and
поведение моего британского коллеги. Я понимаю, что
its
нашим
inhabitants. I
западным
want to
коллегам
apologize to
очень
you for
неприятно
the behavior of our
слушать
British
впечатления
colleague.
людей,
I know that our
которые
Western
действительно
colleagues are not
побывали
very happy to hear
в
the
местах, которые
impressions of
обстреливаются
people who
украинскими
actually
военными
visited
в
places that were
Донбассе,
shelled by
но
the
вы
Ukrainian
сказали очень
military in the
важные вещи.
Donbass. But you
Огромное
said
вам за
very
это
important
спасибо.
things, and I want to thank you very much.
Вы упомянули о том,
You mentioned
что чуть не попали под
that
обстрел
you
в
almost came
Донецке.
under artillery shelling in
Я могу сейчас
Donetsk.
проиллюстрировать
I
то,
can
какая опасность вам
illustrate
угрожала.
what kind of danger threatened you.
В моих руках
In my
сейчас
hands
находятся
is
обломки от нескольких боеприпасов.
fragments of several
Один из них
shells. One of
извлечен с
them
места
was
ракетного удара
recovered
из
from
РСЗО
the
«Хаймарс»
spot
администрации Херсонской
where
области 16 сентября
HIMARS
2022
struck took
года.
place against the administration
В
of the
здании в это время
Kherson
проходило совещание
Oblast
глав
on the 16th
муниципальных
of
образований
September
региона.
2022. In that
Погибли
building,
3
there was a
человека.
meeting by
Многие из
municipalities
присутствующих
of the
получили
region.
ранения
3
и
people died,
контузии.
many received wounds or concussions.
Второй обломок
The second fragment
с места обстрела 22
from
июня этого
the
года
spot of
франко-британскими
shelling
ракетами
on the
Storm Shadow.
22nd of this June
Здесь отчетливо читается Made
by
in France.
French-British rocket Storm Shadow. You
Обстрел
can
был
see
совершен в
Made in
отношении
France
автомобильного
written on it.
моста в
It
населенном
was
пункте Чонгар,
a strike
соединяющего
against
одноименный
an
полуостров с
automobile
Республикой
bridge in
Крым.
the town of Chongar,
Следовательно, этот мост имеет
connecting the
ключевое
peninsula
значение с точки
to
зрения
the
поставки продовольствия и
Crimea. Obviously,
других
this
необходимых грузов.
bridge plays a key role in terms of deliveries of supplies,
Еще один
of
осколок
food
от
and
«Хаймарс» в
other
моих руках
essential
подобран
goods.
после
Another
обстрела
fragment
Ворошиловского
of
и
HIMARS
Куйбышевского района
was
Донецка
picked up after
31
shelling
июля
of
23 года, в
Ворошиловsk and
результате
Kuybyshev
которого
neighborhood of
погиб
Donetsk on
один
the
мирный
31st
житель.
of July of
Еще
this year,
11 были
which led to the
ранены.
death of one civilian and 11 being wounded.
И, наконец,
And lastly,
последний, еще один
last
фрагмент
fragment, one more.
того же американского
The same
боеприпаса,
American
использованного при
munition
обстреле
used
Макеевки
in
4 июля
shelling of
2023
Makeyevka
года.
on the 4th of July of
В
this
результате
year. As a
погиб
result,
один
one
человек,
person died,
68 были
68
тяжело ранены.
were seriously
В том числе
wounded,
трое детей.
including 3 children.
Посмотрите на эти обломки и
Take a look
представьте,
at
что они
these
разлетаются с
fragments
огромной
and
скоростью.
imagine them
Мои британские коллеги,
flying
посмотрите, вы хотите, чтобы люди не
at great
рассказывали об этом.
speed. Maybe our British colleagues can take a particular look at this.
Иными словами, то, что
In
я вам
other
сейчас
words,
показал,
what I
это
just
вещественное
showed you
доказательство того,
is
как
material
поставляемые
evidence of
Западом
how
вооружения
the
активно
weapons
используются
supplied by the
украинцами
West are
для
actively
нападений на
used
объекты гражданской
to
инфраструктуры.
strike civilian infrastructure.
Коллеги, поставки
Colleagues,
киевскому режиму западного оружия
supplies of
продолжаются.
Western weapons to the Kiev regime are
На минувшей
continuing.
неделе
Just last week,
режим Зеленского вновь
Zelensky
показал всему
regime
миру,
once again
что
showed to the
осознанно
world
нарушает
that it
международное гуманитарное
consciously
право,
violates
нанося
international
удары по
humanitarian law
объектам,
by
пользующимся
conducting
гуманитарным
strikes
патронатом.
on targets that are used by
В
humanitarian
Херсонской области
agencies. In the
ВСУ
Kherson
использовали
Oblast, the
американские РСЗО
Ukrainian armed
М-142
forces
«Хаймарс»
used
для прицельных ударов
HIMARS
по
rockets for
зданию
targeted
амбулатории
strikes against
в поселке Новая
the building
Маячка
providing first
и
aid
центральной
in the
районной
town of
больницы в
Novaya
населенном
Mayaka
пункте
and the
Олешко,
central town
где были
hospital
уничтожены
in the
8
town of
карет
Oleshka,
скорой
where
помощи.
8 ambulances were destroyed.
Что это, как не стремление лишить людей
How can you
возможности
call
получить
this other
экстренную
than an
медицинскую
attempt to
помощь?
prevent people from receiving emergency
Видимо,
medical
по замыслу
assistance?
киевских
Obviously,
карателей,
based on the plan
больные и
of the
раненые
Kiev
должны истекать
aggressors,
кровью без
the
шансов на
wounded
спасение.
and the sick are supposed to lie
При
there
этом
bleeding
первые
in their
удары по
wounds
больницам
without being
ВСУ начали
saved. The
наносить, как мы
first,
все знаем,
at
еще
the
в
same time, the first
2014 году.
strikes against hospitals
Но
were
так
first
называемый
conducted by the
цивилизованный западный
Ukrainian
мир
armed forces
все
back
эти
in
годы удобно
2014, but the
существует в
so-called
парадигме
Western
«они
civilized
обстреляли
world
сами себя».
all these years lives in a comfortable paradigm that's called they shelled
Интенсифицировалось огневое
themselves.
воздействие по мирным кварталам
The
Донецка.
intensive strikes
23
against the
октября ВСУ
peaceful
нанесли удар
neighborhoods
из
of
РСЗО
Donetsk
«Град» по Донецкой
they've been
мечети,
stepped up on the
которая была
23rd of
построена при
October.
участии муфтията
The
Стамбула.
Grad multiple rocket launcher was
21
used to
октября
strike the
неонацисты
Donetsk
обстреляли
mosque.
Буденновский и Калининский
On
районы.
the 21st of
Применялись
October, the
осколочные и
Budanovsk
кассетные
and
боеприпасы.
Kalinинsk neighborhoods
Ранены
of
четверо мирных
Donetsk
жителей, повреждены
were hit.
23 частных жилых дома.
4
Фактически целый
civilians were
реактивный
wounded,
снаряд
23
РСЗО
buildings were
М-142
damaged.
был
Almost
обнаружен
an
в спальном
entire
районе города.
HIMARS rocket was found in
Господин председатель,
an
все это
intact rocket was found in
трагическое
the
следствие
suburb of the city.
массированной накачки Украины
All these
смертоносным
are
оружием
tragic
производства стран
consequences of
НАТО.
the massive supply supply of Ukraine with
который
lethal
президент
weapons
Джордж
produced in NATO.
Байден
And President
который
George
квалифицировал
Biden
как
qualified
разумную
these
инвестицию,
supplies as a reasonable
способную
investment that can
принести дивиденды
bring
будущим поколениям.
dividends to future generations.
Чтобы эта инвестиция, видимо,
For
была
this
более доходной,
investment to be obviously more
американские
profitable,
власти
the
буквально
American
10 дней
authorities
назад,
just 10 days ago,
17
on the
октября,
17th of October,
подтвердили осуществление тайной
confirmed that
поставки
they
Украине
had
ракет
provided a secret
Атакамс.
delivery of ATACMS
И ровно в
rockets to
тот
the
же день они
Ukraine.
были
And
задействованы для
exactly the
ударов
same
по
day they
аэродромам
were
Бердянске и
used
Луганске.
to strike airports in Berdansk
Хочу
and
обратить внимание,
Lugansk. I
что
want to
ракеты
just draw your
Атакамс
attention to the fact
относятся к
that
категории
ATACMS
дальнобойных и обладают радиусом
rockets
поражения
are
в 300
long
километров,
range ones that have a range of
а
up
также
to 300
комплектуются
kilometers. They can be armed
кассетными
with
боевыми
cluster
частями со
munitions
сколочно-фугасными
with high explosive
боеприпасами,
fragmentation submunitions.
что делает их
This
особенно
makes them
опасными для мирного
particularly
населения.
dangerous for civilian
Причем
population.
внимание на это обращают и
And
западные
even
эксперты,
Western
например, члены
experts have
американской
mentioned
коалиции
this.
за
For
запрет
example, members of the
кассетных
American
боеприпасов типа
coalition to
«Спичи»,
ban cluster
статья
munition,
которого вышла на
Titus
днях на
Peachy,
портале Responsible Statecraft.
whose article recently appeared on the portal
Соответственно,
Responsible Statecraft.
Вашингтон сознательно берет курс на
Obviously,
эскалацию конфликта и
Washington has
повышение ставок.
consciously taken the path of escalation
Мы
of
уже
the conflict
неоднократно
and
говорили,
upping
что
the
мир на
ante. We
Украине
have already
американцам
stated
и
more
их
than
союзникам
once
не
that
нужен.
the
Киевский режим
Americans
для
and
них лишь
their
инструмент ослабления
allies do
России.
not need peace in Ukraine.
Несколько дней
They need
назад
the Kiev
экс-канцлер
regime
ФРГ
only as an
Герхард
instrument to
Шрёдер
weaken Russia. Just a few
заявил в
days ago,
интервью
the former
Berliner
chancellor
Zeitung,
of Germany,
что
Schroeder,
в марте 22
stated
года
in an
именно
interview
Вашингтон
to the
запретил
Berlin
Киеву вести мирные
Zeitung
переговоры
that
с
in March
Россией.
of 2022 it was Washington that
Ранее это
forbid Kiev
подтвердил
to
и
conduct
экс-премьер
peace
Израиля Беннет,
negotiations with Russia.
назвавший среди
And
ответственных за
the
срыв
former
переговорного
Prime
процесса
Minister of
США,
Israel Bennett
Германию и
also
Францию.
confirmed this, and among
По
those
данным издания
responsible
The
for the
National
failure
Interest,
of
у Украины
negotiations,
трижды
he
была
mentioned the
возможность
United
разрешить
States,
конфликт
Germany,
на
and France.
выгодных для себя
According to
условиях.
the
Однако всякий раз
publication
Вашингтон
National
блокировал
Interest,
диалог.
Ukraine had 3 opportunities to resolve the
Войны
conflict on
традиционно
beneficial
представляли для
conditions.
США
However, each time
разумную
Washington blocked
инвестицию, как
dialogue.
сказал президент Байден.
As
Так
President
как эти
Biden
войны
says,
проходили не на американской территории и
traditionally
позволяли укреплять
wars are
экономическую
a
мощь.
sensible investment for
А
the
чужие
U.S.
издержки,
because
прежде
they're
всего
not,
человеческие и
they don't
гуманитарные,
take place on
американцев
U.S.
никогда не
territory.
волновали.
The cost is
Впрочем,
borne by
удивляться
others,
здесь
and
нечему,
that cost
учитывая,
has
как
never
США
bothered
и
the
их союзники
Americans.
еще как минимум в
And
2014 году
we shouldn't be surprised
предоставили
because the
своим
USA and their
украинским
allies,
подопечным
at least
карт-бланш
starting
на
in
любые преступления.
2014, provided carte blanche to their
Сегодня мы
wards for
доподлинно
any
знаем, как
crimes.
Вашингтон
Today we know
кропотливо
in detail how
реализовывал на Украине
Washington
проект
carefully
антироссии.
implemented its project of
Сегодня также
anti-Russia
выясняется,
on
что он
Ukraine.
напрямую
Today it
помогал им
turns out
заниматься
that it
преступной
directly
деятельностью.
helped them carry out
Похоже,
criminal
что маски
activity. It would
сброшены.
appear
Речь
that
идет
all the
о
masks
прямом
have
содействии
fallen. We're talking
украинцам в
about
совершении
direct
терактов на территории нашей
involvement,
страны.
direct support for
О чем
Ukrainians
красноречиво в
in
начале
conducting
текущей недели
terrorist
рассказала
actions on
газета
the
Washington
territory
Post.
of our country. This was
Бренди уже
eloquently
ссылался на
mentioned
эту
last year
публикацию.
by the Washington Post.
В ней приведены новые детали
In
об
that
убийстве
article, new
журналистки
details are
Дарьи Дугиной
provided
и
about the
блогера
killing of the
Владлена
journalist Daria
Татарского,
Dugin and the blogger Vladlen Tatarsky,
совершенных самым что ни
which
на
were
есть
carried out
террористическим
using the
способом,
best
с
possible
помощью взрывных
terrorist
устройств.
method, using
Вашингтон и
explosive
Лондон прямо
devices.
вовлечены
Washington
и
and
в
London are
обстрелы
directly
Крымского
involved in
моста, в
shelling the
результате которых
Crimea
погибло
Bridge,
7
as a
человек.
result of
Они
which
же
7
помогали
people died.
режиму Зеленского
They
совершить атаки с
helped
использованием беспилотников
Zelensky
против
regime
российских городов,
carry out
включая
attack
попытки
using
атаковать
drones
Кремль.
against Russian cities, including an
Как
attempt to attack the
продемонстрировали
Kremlin.
американские
As
журналисты,
the American
возможность совершить все эти
journalists
деяния
demonstrated, the
появились
capability
у
to conduct
украинских
these
спецслужб
attacks
в
was
результате
acquired by
тесного
the Ukrainian
сотрудничества
special services
Службы
as a result of
безопасности
close
Украины
cooperation by the
и Главного
Ukrainian
управления
special
разведки с
services and the
американским
main
ЦРУ и
intelligence
британским
department
МИ-6.
with the CIA and the British
Более того, само
MI6.
по себе
Furthermore,
Главное управление
the
разведки,
main
согласно материалу,
intelligence department,
является по
according
сути
to this
креатурой
material, is in
американцев.
fact a creature of
Вот как в
the
этом
Americans.
признается неназванный представитель
This is
американской
how an
разведки,
unnamed
цитату которого
representative of an
приводит
American
газета.
intelligence speaks about it,
Цитирую.
and I quote,
Мы просчитали, что
"We
Главное управление
calculated that the
разведки – это более
GUR
малочисленная
was a
и
smaller
проворная
and more
организация,
nimble
на
organization
которую мы могли бы оказывать
where
больше
we could have more
влияния.
impact.
ГУР
This,
была нашим ребенком.
This department
Мы
was our little
предоставили
baby.
им
We
все
gave
новейшее
them all the new
оборудование и
equipment
обучение.
and training." End of quote.
Как сообщают американские
As the
журналисты,
American
эксперты
journalists
ЦРУ обучали
report,
украинские спецслужбы
CIA
деятельности в тылу
experts
в
trained
составе тайных
Ukrainian
групп.
special services about
Если изначально осуществляемые ими миссии носили характер разведывательных, то впоследствии дело дошло до физического уничтожения людей.
In fact, this included
Очевидно,
the
что американские
physical
кураторы не просто выдали своим
killing
подопечным,
of
выражаясь
people.
словами из известной шпионской
Obviously,
саги,
the American
лицензию на
sponsors
убийство,
not only
но и научили ей пользоваться.
gave their wards license to kill, but also
Здесь уместно
taught them how to
вспомнить
use that
браваду
license. And
нынешнего
it's
главы
important
ГУР
to
Кирилла
recall the
Буданова,
bravado
который в
of the
ответ на прямые
former
вопросы
head
журналистов
of
о
the
причастности
GUERRA,
к терактам,
who, in
рассказывал о том,
answering a
как
direct
украинская разведка,
question from
цитирую,
journalists
любит
about
прямые
involvement in
действия
terrorist
и
activities,
не
stated,
побоится их
"We
использовать
use
против кого
direct
бы то ни было
actions. We're
повсюду в
proud
мире.
of using them and are not afraid of using them anywhere in this
Все это,
world
очевидно,
against anyone."
западных покровителей киевского режима
All
не
this is
смущает.
obvious. Obviously,
Раз они в
it
своем
does not
антироссийском
bother
угаре готовы
the
закрывать
Western
глаза на
patrons
то,
of the Kiev
что их
regime. In
подопечные
their
в духе
anti-Russian
EE.UU
obsession, they're
совершают
ready to
теракты
close
против
their
мирного
eyes and look the
населения.
other way when their
Поэтому не
wards
стоит удивляться тому,
in the
что
spirit
среди
of
бесконечно
ISIS
расширяющейся
carry out
номенклатуры
terrorist acts
поставляемых
against
Украине
peaceful
вооружений растет
civilians.
число
So
дальнобойных орудий и ракетных
it's not a
систем,
surprise that the list
которые
of
ВСУ с готовностью
weapons
используют для
supplied
ударов по
to
мирным жителям.
Ukraine
Материальные свидетельства этого я вам сегодня уже продемонстрировал.
that is used against civilians is
Коллеги,
growing.
мы уже неоднократно указывали на
Colleagues,
еще одну
we have
важнейшую причину,
often mentioned
помимо
another
желания
important
обескровить
reason, in
Россию,
addition to
по
the
которой
will,
США и
they
их
wish to
союзники с
bleed
готовностью
Russia.
наращивают военные поставки
Why
Украине.
the USA and
Да и не
their
только ей.
allies are
Это
eagerly
самое
increasing
банальное
military
желание
supplies
заработать.
to the Ukraine. It's the most ordinary desire to
Так, на
profit.
прошлой неделе в Пентагоне и
Just last
НАТО
week
заявили,
in the
что
Pentagon
производители
and
оружия
NATO,
подняли
there was
цены на самые ходовые для Киева
statement that
сейчас
the
артиллерийские
producers of
боеприпасы
weapons have
калибра 155 мм
significantly increased
с
prices on
2000
the
до
munitions
8000
most
евро за
needed by
штуку.
Kiev, the 155
Доход
millimeters,
американских оружейников
increased
таким
from
образом вырос на
2,000 to 8,000 per
450%,
unit.
а
So
Киеву
profits
деваться уже
increased
некуда.
450%.
Хотя получается, что один
Kiev can do
выстрел
nothing about
Украине
it, although it
сейчас
turns
обходится
out
в
that
такую
one
же
shell
сумму,
fired by
сколько в
Ukraine
месяц,
costs about the same
согласно
thing
официальной
as, according to
статистике, в
official
среднем получают
statistics,
20 украинцев.
the salary of 20 Ukrainians.
В общем, как всегда с Вашингтоном,
So,
кому
as
война,
usual,
а
for
кому
most
мать
people,
родна.
war is grief and misery, but some use it as an
На этом фоне
opportunity to
неудивительно,
become
что,
richer. So
как
against that
сообщает
background,
издание
it's no
«Политика», Белый
surprise
дом
that
сейчас
as
пытается поменять аргументы, используемые с тем,
Politico reports,
чтобы
the White
убедить
House is trying to
законодателей
change the
одобрить новый
argument in
пакет
order
помощи
to
Украине.
convince
Главный
Congress
аргумент
to
теперь
approve a new
таков.
package of assistance to
Выделяемая
Ukraine. The
помощь
main argument
станет
is as
залогом
follows.
экономического роста в
The
США,
assistance
послужит
provided will
созданию
be a
рабочих
guarantee of
мест
economic
и укреплению
growth for the
промышленной базы.
U.S. It will contribute to creating
Что
jobs and
называется,
strengthening
циничнее
the
уже просто
industrial
некуда.
basis. It's hard to imagine being more cynical.
Процветают и те, кто обучает
Also,
украинских
those
солдат
who are
убивать.
training Ukrainian soldiers
Делают
to
они
kill
это,
are
судя по всему,
thriving. They're
сознанием
doing
дела.
this basically very professionally.
Так, человек,
Just
который
yesterday,
позавчера
just, for
расстрелял
example,
более
the
20
individual who
человек и
shot
ранил
over
более
20
60 в
people
городе
and wounded some
Льюистоне в
60
американском штате Мэн.
Lewiston in the
Как
American state of
оказалось,
Maine.
лицензированный инструктор по огнестрельному
Turns out is a
оружию.
licensed
В своих
firearms
социальных
instructor.
сетях,
In
как
his
выяснили
social,
американские журналисты, он
in
написал:
social media, according
горд
to
тем,
American
что обучал
journalists, he
защитников
wrote,
свободы по всему миру, в том числе и
proud
на
of the
Украине.
fact that I trained protectors
Вот
of
такие
freedom
люди
around the world,
тренируют
including
украинцев.
the Ukraine.
Стоит ли удивляться тем
That is the kind
зверствам,
of people
которые
who are
они после
trying,
таких
who are
курсов
training
чинят в отношении
Ukrainians.
мирного населения?
So you shouldn't be surprised that
При
the
этом
atrocities,
западные элиты, столь
the kind
активно
of
расширяющие
atrocities
свое сотрудничество с
committed by
киевским
Ukrainians
режимом
after such
и
training.
продолжающие
At the same
вливать в
time,
него
Western
огромные
elites
средства,
that are expanding their
по-прежнему
cooperation
закрывают
with the
глаза
Kiev
на
regime
колоссальный уровень коррупции
continue
на
to look the
Украине,
other way
как и на то, что Киев
regarding
не
the
в состоянии
colossal level of
контролировать
corruption in
попадающие в
Ukraine.
его распоряжение арсенал.
Given that Kiev is not in a condition to
2
control
недели назад
the
мы уже
arsenal that
рассказывали
it
о том,
receives
как
from them.
боеприпасы
2
с
weeks ago,
маркировкой
we
одной из
already
воинских частей ВСУ,
told about
расположенной
the
в городе
fact that how
Мукачево
munitions
Закарпатской области,
markings
всплыли у
of one of
границ
the
Израиля,
combat
в
units
связи с
of
чем СБУ провела
Ukraine
обыски и серию арестов.
emerged
За последнее время
near
появились
the border
данные о
of
том, что
Israel.
от 15 до 20% всей
Recently, there
получаемой
was
Киевом
information that
продукции
up to
военного
15 to
назначения
20% of
первые же 2 недели
military
уходит на
production
серый и черный
received by
рынки.
Kiev winds up in the
После начала
gray
поставок
or
западных
black markets
вооружений
within the first
часть
2 weeks.
номенклатуры
After
появляется
the
в
beginning of
даркнете,
deliveries of
поэтому считай в
Western
открытом доступе.
equipment,
В СМИ циркулируют многочисленные свидетельства
much of it
продажи в
winds up in the
интернете
dark
оружия
net,
и взрывчатки,
basically in open
например,
access.
зарядов С-4, цена на
There
которые
are
начинается от
testimonies in the
$800
internet of
США.
selling of weapons and explosive charges.
Организаторы таких продаж
Organizers of
предоставляют
such
полный
sales
сервис,
provide
предлагают доставку
comprehensive
по всей
service. They
территории
provide
Украины.
delivery
Ну а дальше посреднические
anywhere in
структуры, в том
Ukraine.
числе из
And then
Европы,
intermediate structures,
организуют
including
доставку
from
через
Europe,
Молдавию и
organize
Балканы основным
supplies through the
потребителям,
Moldova and the
террористическим и
Balkans,
антиправительственным
to the
группировкам на
main
Ближнем Востоке,
consumers,
Центральной Африке и
terrorists and
других регионах мира.
anti-government groups in the Middle East, Central
Широкий
Africa, and
резонанс
other
получили и
regions.
свидетельства перешедшего на
The
сторону
testimony of
России
a
украинского
defector,
пограничника,
a Ukrainian
подробно
border guard
рассказавшего
who
журналистам о том,
defected to Russia,
как на Украине и за ее
provided
пределами под пристальным взором аккуратности местных чиновников попросту распродается поставляемой Киеву гуманитарной помощи. Как мы все помним, еще в конце ноября 2022 года в ходе 16-го саммита глав государств и правительств комиссии бассейна озера Чад президент Нигерии Бухари отметил, что власти республики уже обнаружили оружие, предназначавшееся для ВСУ, в руках экстремистов. Коллеги, коррупция проела все украинское общество, местные СМИ пишут об этом в открытую, публикуют все новые и новые примеры. Не замечают этого или не хотят замечать только западные кураторы Киева, и делают они это по вполне понятным причинам. Коррупция ведь вещь заразная, и требуется участие обеих сторон. Поэтому не удивлюсь, если весьма скоро на свет выйдут свидетельства прямого вовлечения западных чиновников и политиков в коррупционные схемы с украинским оружием и гуманитарной помощью. Собственно, такие сведения уже есть. Вот только в них замешаны столь высокие политические круги в США и Великобритании, что говорить об этом пока мало кто решается. Но это только пока. Коллеги, хочу подчеркнуть, что Россия обладает всеми необходимыми средствами для того, чтобы дать достойный отпор и обеспечить защиту своей территории от дальнобойного оружия. Однако сам факт поставок таких вооружений Западом лишний раз говорит о том, что США и их союзники готовы продолжать подпитывать киевский режим и его готовность воевать до последнего украинца, тем самым продлевая его агонию. Отмечаем при этом, что на фоне очевидного дефицита боеприпасов и других вооружений в распоряжении ВСУ западные страны готовы идти на любые ухищрения, чтобы снабдить своих подопечных дополнительными объемами. Они собирают оружие со всех концов света, в том числе изымая из других горячих точек. Причем делают это в открытую и зачастую в нарушении соответствующих решений Совета Безопасности ООН. Нам доподлинно известно о факте передачи на Украину крупной партии боеприпасов, захваченных американскими военными в Оманском заливе. Американцы имеют наглость заявлять об этом открыто. Интересующиеся могут ознакомиться с соответствующим пресс-релизом Центрального командования Вооруженных сил США 3 октября. Вашингтон оправдывает эти якобы законные действия необходимостью соблюдения международного оружейного эмбарго в отношении Йемена. В этой связи обращаем внимание, что согласно резолюции СБ 2216 государства не могут проводить досмотр следующих Йемен грузов в международных водах. Особого инспекционного режима в йеменском контексте попросту не существует. Кроме того, мы встревожены сообщениями о намерении Европейского парламента передать киевскому режиму 146 бронемашин, конфискованных военно-морской операцией ЕС «Ирине» в прошлом году. Оставим за скобками сами случаи захвата, в отношении которых у нас были серьезные вопросы. Важно то, что в случае реализации данная мера вступит в прямое противоречие с профильными решениями Совета, в том числе с резолюцией СБ 2292, где четко прописаны допустимые способы избавления от конфискованных вооружений. Передача третьей стороне допускается только для уничтожения и не подразумевает их последующего использования по назначению. Полагаем, что эти тенденции заслуживают тщательного анализа и обсуждения на площадке СБ. Уважаемые коллеги, в завершении хотел бы подчеркнуть, что уже совершенно очевидно, что украинская авантюра Запада войдет в историю наряду с афганской, сирийской или вьетнамской и станет не менее позорной и бесславной. Уже очевидна незавидная судьба Украины, алчные и безрассудные правители которой ради западных геополитических целей предали свою страну и свой народ, растоптали ее интересы. Им за это воздастся как бы своими поставками оружия и предоставляемой развединформацией. Наши западные коллеги не пытались оттянуть этот момент расплаты. Нет также никаких сомнений, что на фоне краха киевского режима не удастся остаться незапятнанными всем тем, кто сегодня твердит о том, что бескорыстно помогает Украине, как якобы жертвы спровоцированной агрессии. После того, что мы уже узнали о киевском режиме, его покровителях и их 8-летней подготовке к войне с Россией, все это звучит фальшиво и цинично. Хочу, чтобы вы об этом знали, хотя не думаю, что в вашем арсенале появились или появятся какие-то другие аргументы. Благодарю за внимание.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of Switzerland.
Monsieur le Président, je remercie M. EE.UU, haut représentant adjoint pour les affaires de désarmement, pour son exposé. J'ai également pris note de l'intervention de M. Kriviko. La Suisse réitère que l'agression militaire de la Russie contre l'Ukraine constitue une grave violation du droit international. En vertu de la Charte des Nations Unies, l'Ukraine a le droit d'assurer sa sécurité et de défendre son intégrité territoriale et sa souveraineté. Le lourd bilan de
The
cette
heavy
guerre sur
toll
la
of this war
population
on the
civile
civilian
en
population of
Ukraine est
Ukraine
accablant.
is
La Suisse
devastating.
condamne toutes les
Switzerland
violations du droit
condemns all
international
violations of
humanitaire
international
et des droits
humanitarian law
humains.
and human rights.
Toutes les parties au conflit
All
doivent
parties to the
assurer la
conflict
protection
must
de la
ensure
population
the
civile
protection of the
et des
civilian
personnes hors de
population
combat et
and
respecter les
persons
règles
hors de
relatives à
combat
la
and
conduite des
respect the
hostilités.
rules concerning the conduct
La
of
Suisse soutient et
hostilities.
souligne la nécessité
Switzerland
de
supports
poursuivre les
and
efforts
stresses the
sérieux
need to
pour
pursue
parvenir à une paix
serious
globale,
efforts
juste
to
et
achieve a
durable en
comprehensive,
Ukraine,
just, and lasting peace in Ukraine.
conformément aux principes de la Charte des
In
Nations
keeping
Unies.
with the principles of the
Nous
United
rappelons
Nations
qu'il ne peut
Charter,
y avoir de paix
we
durable
recall that
sans
there can be
reddition de
no
comptes.
lasting peace without
Pour
accountability.
parvenir à une solution pacifique,
To achieve a peaceful solution,
intimons une
we
fois de
once
plus la
again
Russie,
urge
après 20
Russia,
longs mois de
after
guerre,
20
à
long months
enfin
of war,
désescalader la
to finally
situation, cesser
de-escalate the
toutes les opérations
situation,
de
cease
combat
all combat
et retirer toutes
operations,
ses troupes du
and
territoire
withdraw all of
ukrainien.
its troops from
La Cour
Ukrainian
internationale de
territory.
justice l'ordonne.
The International
L'Assemblée
Court of
générale le
Justice
demande.
has ordered it. The General
Pour terminer,
Assembly
je réitère
is
que les États doivent
calling for
respecter
it.
leurs
Finally, I
obligations
reiterate that
relatives aux
states must
livraisons
respect their
d'armes,
obligations with
notamment les
regards to arms
résolutions
deliveries,
pertinentes de ce
in
Conseil.
particular
Dans une
the
période où
relevant
l'architecture
resolutions of
globale
this
de
Council, at a time
non-prolifération
when the
est
global
déjà sous une pression
non-proliferation
énorme,
architecture is already
celle-ci
under
devrait
enormous
être
pressure.
renforcée et
It
non
should be
affaiblie.
strengthened, not weakened.
Il est donc regrettable
It
que
is
la
therefore
Russie ait décidé de
regrettable that Russia
revoquer sa
decided to
ratification du
revoke its
traité
ratification
d'interdiction
of the
complète des
Comprehensive
essais
Nuclear
nucléaires.
Test Ban Treaty.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you.
I thank the representative of Switzerland for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
诸位先生，
Mr. President,
安理会此前曾经多次审议向乌克
in the
兰提供武
past,
器
the
问题。
Security Council has had many
例如处在通报
deliberations
时
on
也
the
多次
supply of
提到，
weapons to
武器弹药
Ukraine.
流入
The
冲突地区
Secretariat
可
in
能
its
引发的
briefings
扩
has
散风
mentioned
险，
many times that the
应
flow
当
of
采取
weapons
严
and
格的
ammunition
管控
into
措施。
conflict areas may pose the risk of
中方也多
proliferation,
次就不
and
断
that
向
stricter
战场投
control
放武器的
measures
严
should
重
be
后果
taken. China
表
has
达
also
忧虑和
repeatedly
不安。
voiced its concern and anxiety about the
当前乌
serious
克兰危机
consequences of
尚未
continuous
停
flow
止，
of weapons
地
into
面
the
局势
battlefield.
依然紧
Right
张，
now, the Ukraine crisis
外
has
溢影
ceased.
响
The
持续
situation
蔓
on the
延。
ground remains tense, and its
我们再次
spillover
呼吁乌克
effects
兰危机有
continue to
关各方
spread.
本
Once
着负
again,
责任的
we
态
call
度，
upon
高度
all
重视，
relevant parties to the
并全
Ukraine
力防
crisis
止
to take a
武器弹
responsible
药扩散
approach,
风险，
attach high importance to, and
尤
do
其要
their
避免落
utmost
入
to
恐怖
prevent
分子
the risk
和
of
非国家
proliferation
行为
of
技术
weapons
中，
and ammunition. In
防止
particular,
在
they need to
更大的
prevent
地
them
理
from
范围
falling
内
into the hands of
制造
terrorists
新的
and
动
non-state
荡和冲
actors
突，
to avoid creating
夺
new
取
instability
更
and
多的
conflict
无
in
辜生
wider
命。
geographical areas and
我
claiming
们再
more
次呼吁
innocent
国际
lives.
社会
We
加
once
紧
again
劝和
call
促
on the
谈，
international
推动
community
停
to
火止
step up
战，
efforts to
避免
facilitate
加
peace
剧对
talks,
抗，
promote
停止
cessation
扩大
of
分裂，
hostilities, avoid
携手
intensifying
应对危机
confrontations,
的负
stop
面外溢
widening
效
the
应，
division,
共
and
同
to
努
join
力
hands to
推动
address
危
the
机的
negative spillover
早
effects
日
and
政治
work
解决。
together towards an early political settlement of the
中方始终
crisis.
同这个世界
China
上期
always
盼和
stands
支持和
together
平的
with
国
all
家站在一
countries
起，
that
始
aspire
终
for
坚
and
持
support peace.
宪章的
China
宗旨和
always
原则，
upholds the purposes and
始终
principles
致
of
力
the
于
UN
通过对话
Charter
谈判
and is
推
committed
动
to
危机的政
facilitate
治
the
解决。
political settlement of the crisis through
我们将
dialogue
继
and
续同有关各
negotiations.
方
We
保
will
持接
continue
触
to
沟
maintain
通，
contact and communication
加
with
强
all relevant
对
parties
话交流，
to enhance dialogue
为
and
和平
exchanges,
聚集希望，
raise hope for
为推
peace,
动危
and
机
work
早
to
日政治
contribute
解
to an
决
early political
做出
settlement
努力
of the
与贡献。
crisis.
谢谢主席。
Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of China for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Deputy Ebo, for your briefing today. Your continuing efforts to counter weapons diversion are critical. It has been 2 weeks since the Russian Federation last called a meeting of this council on this issue. Today's meeting is yet another attempt to divert the council's attention from Russia's continued blatant breaches of international peace and security in violation of the UN Charter as the Kremlin wages its brutal war of aggression against Ukraine. Addressing security threats from the illicit proliferation of conventional arms is a long-standing U.S. international security priority. But Russia has not called us here to engage in a serious discussion about illicit proliferation, nor is Russia interested in a factual discussion about the dangerous and destabilizing consequences of its armed invasion of Ukraine. The Russian delegation undermines the credibility of this council when it calls repeated meetings to spread false and misleading accusations regarding the assistance from allies allies and partners in support of Ukraine's legitimate self-defense within Ukraine's own sovereign territory. It is no surprise we have seen an increase in the number of meetings of this kind recently, as the Russian Federation expands its military partnership with the DPRK. This is clearly to serve as a distraction. We condemn the DPRK for providing Russia with its military equipment, which Russia will use to further attack Ukraine's cities and kill Ukraine civilians. And we remind Russian Security Council resolutions prohibit all member states from procuring arms or related material from the DPRK. Any revenue the DPRK receives from such transfers could be channeled by Pyongyang to further develop its unlawful weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs. Colleagues, let's make no mistake. It is Russia's invasion of its sovereign neighbor and Russia's procurement of weapons in violation of Security Council resolutions that present the real threat to international peace and security and the global non-proliferation regime. Where Moscow's actions undermine long-standing obligations under the Council's resolutions, we will keep working domestically and with this Council to identify, expose, and counter Russia's attempts to acquire arms in violation of this Council's resolutions. We call on Russia to recommit to the maintenance of peace and security and to immediately withdraw its forces from Ukraine's sovereign territory, aligned with its responsibilities as a permanent member of this Council. And I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, President, and I thank Mr. Ebo for his informative briefing and Mr. Critico for sharing his views. We reaffirm Malta's long-standing position on the risks that the uncontrolled flow of weapons has on regional and international peace. By calling for another meeting on this matter, the Russian Federation continues to cynically distort facts. Furthermore, this meeting is being called against the backdrop of the Russian Federation's decision to withdraw its ratification from the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. This undermines the ongoing international non-proliferation and disarmament efforts and the international security architecture. Malta stands firm in its position that Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders must be safeguarded. Ukraine has the right to self-defense as enshrined in Article 51 of the UN Charter. At no stage did Ukraine commit or even threaten to commit an attack against Russia. President, through its aggression, Russia continues to be responsible for violations of international humanitarian law and human rights. The thousands of injuries and deaths have been mostly a result of the use of explosive weapons with wide area effects, as well as armed, uncrewed aerial vehicles. The recent missile attack on civilians perpetrated by Russia against the Nova Poshta postal terminal is the latest shocking development in a long string of atrocities. Those responsible must be held accountable. We are also deeply concerned about the humanitarian situation on the ground. We stress again the parties' obligation to protect civilians and civilian objects and facilitate the flow of humanitarian assistance. In closing, President, this week's round of peace formula talks among national security advisors in Malta is the most concrete support that we can provide for keeping Ukraine high on the international agenda until a just, comprehensive and lasting peace is achieved. We once again urge Russia to end its hostilities and withdraw its military forces, equipment, and proxies from the entire internationally recognized territory of Ukraine. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Malta for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President, and thank you to Mr. Ebo for his very helpful briefing. Colleagues, Russia wishes to address weapons proliferation. In a happy coincidence, the UK would also like to address weapons proliferation, but that may be about the only thing we agree on today. Russia has spent the last 2 decades flouting its obligations in arms control and disarmament. Its systematic efforts to undermine this architecture have only accelerated since its invasion of Ukraine. Russia's withdrawal from the Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty is yet another step in this direction, along with its announcement that it will withdraw ratification of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. This follows rejection of Vienna Document modification, withdrawal from Open Skies, violation of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, and suspension of its participation in New START. Let us turn to the situation in Ukraine. Russia's sourcing of weapons from heavily sanctioned states such as North Korea and Iran violate UN Security Council resolutions, undermine Security Council credibility, and pose a serious risk to international peace and security. The Russian delegation held up Western weapons fragments today as if that was a big reveal. It isn't. We are open about the support we provide. Russia, on the other hand, still deny that they receive weapons from Iran and North Korea because they know that it is illegal. Russia has destroyed schools, hospitals, grain silos, and energy facilities. It has deployed hypersonic missiles, one-way attack drones, and a cruise missile with a range of over 2,000 kilometers. It has used conventional anti-personnel mines and improvised booby traps, including in children's toys. The UK and others' provision of weapons to Ukraine are in support of Ukraine's defence of its sovereign territory against Russia's illegal invasion. The weapons the international community are providing to Ukraine are not what is prolonging this war. The only obstacle to peace here is Russia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom. I'll give the floor to the representative of Ghana.
Thank you, President. Let me begin by expressing my delegation's appreciation to the Deputy to the High Representative of the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs, Mr. Abel, for his informative briefing. President, as this Council is well aware, violent conflicts create conditions for amassing weapons and increase the risk of proliferation and diversion to unintended users, further exacerbating other conflict situations and worsening global conditions for peace and security. States, therefore, have an obligation to uphold and comply with relevant international non-proliferation measures designed to mitigate against the spread of weapons from the theaters of conflict. Ghana remains deeply concerned that, to date, no plausible advancements have been made towards peace in Ukraine. In spite of the several imperatives for bringing the war to an end, the actions of the parties continue to be heavily driven by a military logic. We strongly believe that, like all other violent conflicts, peace cannot be won militarily, and as we have often stated in this chamber, there is no alternative to winning the peace in Ukraine. Achieving the cessation of hostilities and turning a new chapter of peacemaking are critical and must therefore remain an international priority. We therefore continue to urge Council members, together with the support of the international community, to intensify diplomatic efforts geared towards ending the war and opening up channels for dialogue. We emphasize that only a resolution founded on the principles of international law and the values of the Charter of the United Nations can ensure a sustainable and durable peace between the two neighboring countries. We reaffirm Ghana's unwavering support for the sovereignty, political independence and territorial integrity, as well as the right to self-defense established under the Charter of the United Nations. Finally, we take this opportunity to once more reiterate our call for the cessation of hostilities and the de-escalation of tensions, and call again on the Russian Federation to immediately and unconditionally withdraw its troops from the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ghana for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of Mozambique.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to thank Mr. Adedeji Ebo, Deputy to the High Representative of the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, for his briefing, and Mr. Rand Credit for his perspective on the issue. Mr. President, our stance on the matter under consideration is well known and remains unchanged since our last meeting on the subject. We therefore reiterate that the supply of weapons and ammunition to warring parties in the Russian-Ukraine armed conflict, as into any other conflict situation, raises significant concerns about the likelihood of escalation and dispersion. We also repeatedly called on the parties to uphold their duty to protect civilians and to ensure compliance with all applicable international law, including international humanitarian law. We voiced our concerns over the disregard of safeguards to avoid the use of explosive weapons in populated areas, as their use is highly and likely to result in indiscriminate harm to civilians and disruption of essential services. As the military hostilities drag on with no clear prospect of a resolution in sight, established norms governing welfare and previously respected red lines are increasingly being ignored. Furthermore, we are worried that the warring parties could be inching closer to the dreaded threshold of calling their respective allies to join the conflict. We reiterate our call to the conflicting parties to scrupulously respect the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution in the conduct of their military operations. Mr. President, it is unfortunate that the conflict between Ukraine and Russia has been a source of division and indecisiveness in the Council. It has diverted essential resources and negatively impacted action toward urgent action of the Council in other conflicts. Additionally, the conflict has plunged the Security Council in a fractious new normal, making consensus more laborious than ever to achieve and impeding efforts to fulfill its responsibility in maintaining international peace and security. The unwillingness to engage in dialogue and de-escalation in the war in Ukraine is having serious implications on the Council's ability to stand up to grave humanitarian calamities, terrorism, and hostage situations in other regions that are dangerously close to further conflagration. To conclude, Mr. President, as the blessings of peace become rare in our times, Mozambique calls once again on all parties to address their security concerns and interests by peaceful means and immediately silence the guns. In this path, genuine trust and mutual respect between UN members, as well as adherence by international law, is the only sustainable route to achieve lasting peace and security around the world at large, and in Ukraine in particular, committed to a constructive and engaged dialogue. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Mozambique for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of Albania.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Deputy EE.UU, for the briefing. Once again, instead of acting with objectivity and reality, Russia prefers to continue misusing this platform for their propaganda. While Kremlin is looking for arms supply from DPRK and Iran in violation of Security Council resolutions, it tries to divert the attention of the Council with so-called Western arms supply. Russia has committed an unprovoked military aggression against Ukraine, violating the UN Charter and the international law. Because of this aggression, the international community is assisting Ukraine in its struggle to defend its country, in accordance with the UN Charter and international law. A couple of days ago, the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine submitted to the General Assembly a report with new evidence that Russian authorities have committed violations of international human rights and international humanitarian law and corresponding crimes in Ukraine. This should have been a reason for Russia to call a Security Council meeting today. In this context, together with our British and American colleagues, we are co-organizing today an area formula meeting where the findings of this report will be presented. We are looking forward to hear real facts and not propaganda. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of Albania for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President,
muchas gracias.
thank you very much.
Hemos escuchado con
We
atención
listened
las
very
exposiciones
attentively to
informativas
de los
briefings
ponentes
of
esta
the
tarde.
keynote speakers this afternoon.
Compartimos la preocupación del alto
we share the
representante
concerns of
adjunto para asuntos de desarme,
for the
el
Deputy High
señor
Representative
Avdivka
for Disarmament Affairs, Mr.
en particular
Avdivka
en relación con los riesgos que supone la corriente de entrada de armas y municiones, y respaldamos sus recomendaciones, en particular en torno a las medidas necesarias para mitigar esos riesgos. Insistimos, señor presidente, en la conveniencia de incrementar, por ejemplo, los estándares de marcación, registro, trazabilidad de las armas y municiones, y de implementar cualquier medida destinada a evitar el desvío, la propagación y escalada del conflicto. El Ecuador sigue rechazando la violencia armada, la militarización y el armamentismo, y reconoce el derecho de legítima defensa. Seguiremos insistiendo, señor presidente, en la necesidad de privilegiar la protección de civiles y el objetivo de la estabilidad global por encima de cualquier otra lógica de industria, producción o distribución. El suministro de materiales y sistemas de defensa debe contribuir a proteger la infraestructura civil y a la población. Cualquier suministro de armas o municiones debe estar sujeto a las garantías de respeto de los principios de distinción, proporcionalidad y precaución al momento del empleo. Finalmente, una vez más, insistimos a la Federación Rusa que ponga fin a la ocupación para permitir un alto al fuego que posibilite avanzar hacia una paz justa y duradera.
I thank the representative of Ecuador for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Deputy High Representative Mr. Avdivka and the other briefer for their briefings. Japan recalls that the Security Council discussed on this agenda 2 weeks ago. We would like to repeat our views. No support should be given to a state that is violating international law and the UN Charter. It will be particularly unacceptable if support is rendered in violation of existing Security Council resolutions. All member states should refrain from supporting Russia's aggression either directly or indirectly. In this regard, arms transfer from North Korea to Russia, which directly violates relevant Security Council resolutions, is absolutely unacceptable. Such transfer would not only exacerbate the situation in Ukraine, but also undermine the non-proliferation regime which we all value. We urge them to abide by the relevant Security Council resolutions and immediately cease all activities that violate them. Mr. President, 2 days ago, we witnessed a proposed Security Council resolution condemning violence against civilians and calling for compliance with obligations under international humanitarian law. That is what we want to realize in the war of aggression against Ukraine. Let me remind ourselves, this war was launched by Russia. If Russia is truly concerned about risks posed by the influx of weapons, it should immediately stop the war it started. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Japan for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President,
je remercie Monsieur EE.UU
I
pour son
thank Mr.
exposé.
EE.UU for his
Pour la
briefing.
deuxième fois
For the second time
en l'espace de 2
in
semaines,
2 weeks,
la Russie
Russia
demande une réunion
has
de ce Conseil
requested
afin
a
d'accuser
meeting
les
of this
livraisons
council in order
d'armes à
to
l'Ukraine
accuse the delivery
d'être
of
responsable
weapons to Ukraine
de la guerre
of being
dans ce pays.
responsible for the war in that
Une
country.
nouvelle réunion
Another
sur ce
meeting
sujet
on this subject
ne réussira pas plus
will
que les
not,
précédentes
any more than
à
the
faire
ones
accepter
before
une
it,
telle réécriture de l'histoire.
help to
Pas plus
secure
que les
acceptance
précédentes
of rewriting
ne
of
fera
history.
oublier la
Not any
responsabilité de
more
la
than
Russie
preceding meetings will
dans le
help us forget
déclenchement
the
de ce
responsibility of
conflit.
Russia
Pas plus que les précédentes, elle ne détournera l'attention des frappes conduites chaque jour par la Russie contre les infrastructures civiles ukrainiennes en violation du droit international humanitaire. La Russie a pris l'initiative de ce conflit en agressant l'Ukraine au mépris des principes de la Charte des Nations Unies. Dès le 16 mars 2022, la Cour internationale de justice a enjoint la Russie à cesser son offensive sur le territoire ukrainien et a demandé à l'armée russe de retourner en Russie. À de multiples reprises, l'Assemblée générale des Nations Unies a demandé à une écrasante majorité de mettre un terme à cette guerre d'agression et elle a exigé que la Russie retire ses troupes du territoire ukrainien. Cependant, celle-ci persiste depuis plus de 20 mois dans une guerre contraire au droit international, destructrice pour les populations civiles et déstabilisatrice pour la sécurité alimentaire du monde entier. Elle poursuit cette agression au moyen d'armes dont certaines sont acquises auprès de l'Iran et de la Corée du Nord en violation flagrante des résolutions que ce Conseil a adoptées à l'unanimité. Face à cette agression illégale, l'Ukraine dispose en vertu de l'article 51 de la Charte du droit de se défendre. La France, avec ses partenaires, a choisi d'apporter à l'Ukraine un soutien militaire pour l'aider à exercer ce droit. Nous nous sommes engagés à fournir à l'Ukraine des matériels afin de lui permettre de défendre son intégrité territoriale, sa souveraineté et son indépendance. Nous soutenons l'Ukraine dans son droit à la légitime défense, avec pour objectif d'aboutir à l'établissement dans ce pays d'une paix juste et durable. Celle-ci ne pourra se fonder que sur les principes de la Charte. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of France for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Gabon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie le haut représentant adjoint pour les questions de désarmement, Monsieur Deputy High Representative of the United Nations, for his presentation. J'ai écouté avec attention les remarques de Monsieur le Président, voilà 671 jours que la guerre sévit en Ukraine sans discontinuer et que le Conseil se réunit de façon régulière sans qu'il parvienne à ouvrir une voie de sortie du conflit. Les attaques au sol, en mer ou aérienne par missiles ou par drone se poursuivent chaque jour, faisant toujours plus de victimes civiles et détruisant les infrastructures civiles. Les installations civiles essentielles telles que les réseaux de gaz, l'électricité ou même les installations agricoles. Les appels incessants de tous ceux qui, au sein de la communauté internationale, appellent à l'arrêt des combats et surtout au respect du droit international humanitaire restent sans suite. Au lieu de cela, ce sont des signaux d'une intensification des combats et d'une radicalisation des positions qui continuent de nous parvenir. Avec l'arrêt de l'accord sur l'exportation des céréales de la mer Noire, c'est aussi l'espoir d'un canal de discussion ouvert qui s'est éteint, éloignant avec lui l'horizon d'un déploiement de la diplomatie vers une solution politique. Monsieur le Président, mon pays est alarmé par le climat sécuritaire international extrêmement tendu dans lequel le monde est plongé aujourd'hui. Les conflits naissent ou ressurgissent sans que les mécanismes prévus par la Charte des Nations Unies, notamment au chapitre 6, ne soient mis en branle pour essayer de les éteindre. Le recours à la force militaire continue de toute évidence de prendre le pas sur le règlement pacifique des différends, remettant en question la pertinence même des instruments et mécanismes internationaux censés garantir la paix et la sécurité internationale. Il est pourtant fondamental que nous puissions jouer notre rôle et prendre nos responsabilités en tant qu'État membre du Conseil de sécurité pour nous réconcilier avec la vocation de ce Conseil qui est, nous le rappelons, le Conseil de sécurité et non un Conseil de guerre. Le meilleur moyen d'infléchir la tendance actuelle à la conclusion de nouvelles alliances militaires, à la révision par certains pays de leur politique d'armement, au retour en arrière sur l'utilisation de certaines armes de destruction massive ayant des effets particulièrement inhumains, à l'exemple des armes à sous-munitions, le seul moyen de renverser cette tendance est d'arrêter la guerre. Nous devons en tout état de cause redoubler d'efforts pour respecter les engagements internationaux de désarmement et de non-prolifération nucléaire auxquels nous avons librement consenti. Il est de notre responsabilité commune de prévenir le transfert, le détournement d'armes, de munitions ou de matières fissiles à des acteurs non étatiques. Les attaques par armes téléguidées font de nombreux dégâts matériels et de nombreuses victimes civiles. Leur utilisation doit être encadrée. C'est pourquoi mon pays réitère son soutien à l'appel du secrétaire général des Nations Unies et du CICR concernant l'adoption de nouvelles lignes, de nouvelles règles internationales sur les systèmes d'armes autonomes, en limitant leur utilisation par l'édiction de nouvelles lignes rouges, nous contribuerons à limiter leurs conséquences humanitaires. Mon pays appelle l'ensemble des parties à renforcer les mesures de traçabilité et de contrôle des armes conventionnelles, à s'abstenir d'utiliser des armes de destruction massive, à se conformer strictement au droit international humanitaire et à respecter les principes de distinction, de précaution et de proportionnalité. Pour conclure, mon pays appelle l'ensemble des parties, y compris les organisations internationales et sous-régionales auxquelles les belligérants sont partis, à créer les conditions permettant le dialogue et la négociation pour faire taire les armes en Ukraine et garantir la coexistence pacifique. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
I thank the representative of Gabon for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Deputy to the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, Mr. Edo, for his briefing. We have recently marked 600 days since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and the prospect of a just and lasting peace seems further away than ever. Right now, the pursuit of military solution is prioritized, and a peace agreement seems a distant possibility. It's against this backdrop that we reiterate our support for efforts to mitigate any potential risks associated with arms transfers to Ukraine, the region, and beyond. This includes the important task of safeguarding weapons during the transfer, storage, and deployment. We continue to encourage careful implementation of various measures that have been put in place to mitigate any unintended risks that may be associated with arms transfer in this context. We also highlight the need for effective oversights by national authorities. This is of particular importance in situations of armed conflict, where additional risks may be present, and we encourage national authorities to take appropriate actions to counter these risks. We also welcome ongoing efforts and initiatives to strengthen arms control in Ukraine and across the region, especially those aimed at avoiding any potential diversion of weapons. Greater cooperation, including information sharing and developing best practices, can reduce some of these risks. In particular, we welcome the work of the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs and their program of action to prevent, combat, and eradicate the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons in all its aspects, and its international tracing instrument. The UAE remains committed to supporting all serious efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace in Ukraine in line with UN Charter. No stone must be unturned to achieve this objective. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Arab Emirates for their statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Brazil. I thank Mr. Adedeshiabo for his briefing, and I take note of Mr. Kredico's remarks. Brazil shares the concerns about the use or threat of use of weapons and ammunition with increasing lethality and destructive power in Ukraine. This trend, aggravated by the unacceptable threat of resorting to the nuclear option, hampers a peaceful solution to the conflict and portends even greater suffering for the civilian population. The scale of arms of ammunition transfers to Ukraine could leave a dreadful legacy for current and future generations. We are seriously concerned about the long-term impact of deployment of landmines in extensive portions of the Ukrainian territory, as well as the risks of diversion of weapons and ammunition to criminals and terrorist groups. We encourage the parties to adopt, to the maximum extent possible, measures to prevent this scenario in line with the multilateral instruments we have at our disposal. The protection of nuclear civil installations is crucial. We renew the call for member states to join the Arms Trade Treaty and uphold the UN Register of Conventional Arms. We also urge the parties to act with transparency and refrain from transactions that may constitute violations of relevant Security Council resolutions. Brazil reaffirms its commitment to the pursuit of a mutually acceptable peaceful solution and remains willing to contribute to efforts leading to a peaceful solution. Article 33 of the UN Charter provides the roadmap to a peaceful solution. Diplomatic negotiations and strict adherence to international law are the only way to ensure a just and lasting peace in the region and everywhere. I thank you. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council. I also recognize Russian delegate in the permanent seat of the Soviet Union. I would like to thank the Deputy to the High Representative for his briefing, and with regard to his neighbor, I could only recommend this guest to be rather wary of those who have brought him today to this chamber, as this is long-lasting Russian practice to get rid of those agents they use to the full and do not need any longer. We reiterate our condemnation of the Russia's misuse of the Security Council toolbox to divert attention of the Council from the war crimes and crimes against humanity Russia has committed and continue to commit in Ukraine. It's utterly unacceptable to hastily request the Council meetings with the only purpose to undermine other events, scheduled and prepared by other members well in advance. What is the value of this discussion? To record again the cognitive dissonance in the Russian statements. Since the February 2022, the Russian delegation has consistently justified invasion by referring to the right to self-defense and saying, I quote, that the decision to start the so-called special military operation in Ukraine was taken in accordance with Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. And 2 days ago, this very delegation in this very chamber, with a straight face, referred to the ICJ ruling to prove that the right to self-defense is inapplicable in the case of the occupying power. And that's exactly what Russia is with respect to Ukraine. And if the Russian Federation wants to use the ICJ rulings to support its position, it must start at last implementing the decision concerning Russia itself, in particular the ICJ order of 16 March 2022. Otherwise, all this performance is just manipulation, hypocrisy, and cynicism. A very pathetic performance, given the fact that while trying to blame the victim of armed aggression for receiving means to defend itself, Russia has received Iranian drones for more than a year and is now ready to kneel down before the North Korean regime to beg for additional weapons and munition to continue its war of aggression against Ukraine. Mr. President, Ukraine will continue to exercise its right to self-defense in strict accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter. We will continue to fight until every Ukrainian citizen and every parcel of our sovereign land are liberated and Russia suffers military defeat in Ukraine. To this end, the Ukrainian armed forces will continue direct strikes at all legitimate military targets. We will destroy airports with assault helicopters, as it happened on 17 October in occupied Berdyansk and Lugansk. And we will further eliminate Russian hardware and soldiers sent now by Moscow generals as cannon fodder in suicidal attacks on the Ukrainian city of Avdivka. But we will definitely not hit funeral receptions, postal depots, shopping malls, or residential areas in the vicinity of the nuclear stations, as Russian terrorists have done. We reiterate that Ukraine's peace formula already exists, and the essential element for comprehensive, just, and lasting peace it promotes is consistency with the Charter, including the principles of sovereign equality and territorial integrity of states within its internationally recognized borders. This also fully follows the logic of the UNGA resolution ES 11/6 of 23 February 2023. It means the only right solution for the Russian soldiers in Ukraine would be either to surrender, as many have already done, or to withdraw from the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine without any further delay. Meanwhile, as long as they are in Ukraine, they will remain the legitimate military target and will be treated accordingly. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ukraine for their statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.
I've been black, but when I come back, no, I ain't got the time. And if my daddy thinks I'm fine, just try to make me go to rehab, I won't go. I'd rather be at home with Ray. I ain't got 70 days. 'Cause there's nothing you can teach me that I can't learn from Mr. Hathaway. to rehab. I say no, no, no. Yes, I've been black, but when I come back, you'll no, no, no. I ain't got the time, and if my daddy thinks I'm fine, he's trying to make me go to rehab. I won't go, go, go.
Runaway lovers, far from home. Shadows were growing long. Somebody busking, somebody leaving for the borderline tonight. Donna was burning for a look around, forgetting Chicago now. And as the night cooled, safe and sound, in each other's arms, borderline down, all the way round. Now the leaves are turning brown, all the way round, borderline.
Radio Suisse Pop.
Es kommt mir vor, als wär ich's erst grad gsi. Wie für ein Wochenende ins Tessin. Nach Piasta hab ich die Ausfahrt genommen. Wo's das erste Mal ist, kommst nie kommen. Und an der Tankstelle vis-à-vis hat sie mich irgendetwas gefragt. Ich hab sie nur noch nicht verstanden und kein Wort mehr rausgebracht. Es hat Schnee in Bellinzona gehabt, wo ich sie das erste Mal getroffen habe, hat so gern gesagt, bis der lange Winter wieder geht, bleib ich bei dir, bleib ich bei dir. Es hat Schnee in Bellinzona gehabt, wo ich sie das erste Mal getroffen habe, hat so gern gesagt, bis der lange Winter wieder geht, bleib ich bei dir, bleib ich bei dir. Hast sie dann später an der Kasse gesehen und sie dann gefragt, brennt un Espresso con me? Und weil's noch fester ist, Schnee kommt, hat sie gelacht und gemeint, und hätte ich damals nicht gesagt, sie hat sich's anders überlegt, dann hätte ich auch niemals gewusst, dass sie so gut küsst. Es hat Schnee in Bellinzona gehabt, wo ich sie das erste Mal getroffen habe, hat so gern gesagt, bis der lange Winter wieder geht, bleib ich bei dir, bleib ich bei dir. Wo die Sonne wieder ist gekommen, da ist sie einfach davon. Ich habe nicht gefragt, wie sie heisst, ich weiss auch nicht, wo sie wohnt. Im Frühling ist es so weit, dann fahr ich ins Tessin und hoffe dann, dass ich sie wieder sehe. Es hat Schnee in Bellinzona gehabt, und ich sie das erste Mal getroffen habe, hat so gern gesagt, bis der lange Winter wieder geht, bleib ich bei dir, bleib ich bei dir, bleib ich bei dir, bleib ich bei dir. Es hat Schnee in Bellinzona gehabt, und ich sie das erste Mal getroffen habe, hat so gern gesagt, bis der lange Winter wieder geht, bleib ich bei dir, bleib ich bei dir, bleib schau bei mir.
I've known a few guys who thought they were pretty smart, but you've got being right down to an art. You think you're a genius, you drive me up the wall. You're a regular, original, know it all. Oh, you think you're special. Oh, you think you're something else. Okay, so you're a rocket scientist. That don't impress me much. So you got the brains, but have you got the touch? Now don't get me wrong, yeah, I think you're alright, but that won't keep me warm in the middle of the night. That don't impress me much. Yeah, yeah. I never should fall out of place. Oh, you think you're special. Oh, you think you're something else. Okay, so you're Brad Pitt. That don't impress me much. So you got the looks, but have you got the touch? Now don't get me wrong, yeah, I think you're alright, but that won't keep me warm in the middle of the night. That don't impress me much. You're one of those guys who likes to shine his machine. You made me take off my shoes before you let me get in. I can't believe you kiss your car goodnight. Now come on, baby, tell me, you must be joking, right? Oh, you think you're something special. Oh, you think you're something else. Okay, so you got a car. That don't impress me much. So you got the moves, but have you got the touch? Now don't get me wrong, yeah, I think you're alright, but that won't keep me warm in the middle of the night. That don't impress me much. Oh no, you think you're cool, but have you got the touch? Now don't get me wrong, yeah, I think you're alright, but that won't keep me warm on the long, cold, lonely nights. That don't impress me much. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what do you think, you're Elvis or something? That don't impress me That don't impress me
Hey, yeah. People call me foolish, they don't understand the way that I have chosen. I make my stand, and maybe I'm too blinded to realize I'm living in a dream world and I have to pay the price. There's nothing that will separate your loving heart from mine, and you can do whatever you like anyways, I'll be fine. You can run away, believe me now. You can shout and scream and beat me up, that will never change a single thing. I will stay with you. You can run away, believe me now. You can shout and scream and beat me up, that will never change a single thing. I will stay with you all my life. Hey, 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 hey. And you might think that I should open my eyes, pack my bags, now take a bow, say goodbye. So I'm leaving my spirit right there where you are. My desire for you, it no longer tears me apart. There's nothing that will separate your loving heart from mine, and you can do whatever you like anyways, I'll be fine. You can run away, leave me now. You can shout and scream and beat me up, that will never change a simple thing. I will stay with you. You can run away, leave me now. You can shout and scream and beat me up, that will never change a simple thing. I will stay with you all my life. Never, 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 never. Nothing separates your tender heart from me. Never, 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 never. Nothing separate your tender heart from me. You can run away, leave me now. You can shout and scream and beat me up. I will never change a single thing. I'll stay with you all my life. All my life. You can run away, leave me now. You can shout and scream and beat me up. I will never change a single thing. I will stay with you all. Shout and scream and beat me up. That will never change a single thing. I will stay with you all my life. All my life. All my
got a hold on me. I got a villa out by the sea where nobody be except you and me. And I'm gonna be your surprise. Ooh, take that red pill tonight and we're shining bright like we're jewelry. Now we're wide awake, me and you. It's a wild escape for us two. Waking up with the birds, cause boy, we deserve to be finally free. Like we're the last two on earth, put away your work, cause I'm all you need. And I know I saw